I think I'd use the word unprecedented because I don't think any other country in a 40-year period since the reform and opening up has developed as fast as China has. If one looks at the level of extreme poverty in the country 40 years ago, if one looks at the other indicators like maternal mortality or stunting of babies and children, these numbers were all pretty poor for China 40 years ago. Now we see that something like 800 million people have lifted themselves out of poverty, out of extreme poverty. We see the social indicators for China all having improved strongly, and China has moved from a low human development country to a high human development country according to the Human Development Index. So that shows extraordinary progress across all parameters of development, both in terms of income, but also in terms of the human development, health and education and so on. The next year will be a very important year for China because it's the target to eliminate extreme poverty in rural areas by the end of 2020. And I think this is very much an achievable target. So that will be a great achievement. If one looks at 40 years ago, the poverty levels 40 years ago, and today almost zero, I mean that will be, as I said earlier, almost like an unprecedented achievement for a country to have done in a relatively short period of time. There are still challenges in terms of unbalanced development, still challenges in terms of the western regions of the country, in terms of development there, the imbalances between urban and rural areas, and one has to also look at the challenges in the future of an aging population. How does one deal with elderly care? How does one ensure the pension system is strong? So basically I think one has to move to look at some of these issues around social protection, around relative poverty in the future. Well, of course the BRI is a massive global trade and investment program with a focus on infrastructure in particular, on hard investment. And the SDGs cover all aspects of development. They're very comprehensive. They cover infrastructure, they cover transport, they cover energy, and of course they also cover health and education, decent jobs and income for people in the world. So what we want to see is how can the Belt and Road investment support the achievement of the SDGs. And I think there are many opportunities to see how investments that are part of the Belt and Road can be implemented in a way which support SDG achievement and which are done in a sustainable way and a way which is supporting some of the poorer groups in societies. So I think there's a great potential for the Belt and Road to act as an accelerator for the Sustainable Development Goals if the investments are targeted towards some of the SDGs and are implemented in a way which is environmentally sustainable and socially responsible. We live in a world which faces very serious challenges, for example climate change, for example inequality within countries and between countries, which create social instabilities around the world. And we need to look for global solutions. And global solutions work best when they're multilateral platforms which can be used to discuss these solutions and come to common agreement on the way forward. So we need to have a global conversation across all the countries, all the member states of the United Nations. We need to hear from all segments of society. We need to hear especially from youth because they're the ones who are going to grow up into the society in the future. And we want to hear their ideas on how we can make multilateralism more effective, how we can take multilateralism into the new era. China made some very important commitments at the Paris talks and was a champion for the Paris Agreement. And it's very important that China does play a leadership role. The commitments at Paris were very important, but they're not enough. We really need all nations to step up and to see how they can enhance their commitments in time for the next COP in 2020 in Glasgow. I think for all countries it will be important to come up with heightened national contributions in terms of curbing these emissions. And I think China has a lot to share with the world. I mean, it's investment in new industry and new economy, investment in renewables, solar and wind power are very impressive.